The power of using the right verb. Hi, I'm Iris Marsh. I'm an editor and a writer, and today we're going to talk about verbs, and verb choice. What makes, in particular, a weak verb or strong verb, and we'll look at an example where I will edit a piece of text to kind of show you how you can do this in your own manuscript. So yeah, let's just dive right in. Okay, so first let's discuss what weak verbs are and what strong verbs are. So I'm not talking about the grammatical sense of that here. We're talking about the meaning that's behind the verbs, the image that it creates in your mind as you read them. So weak verbs are more generic. They don't paint that clear visual. For instance, if you have walk, how does someone walk? Someone can walk in various ways, right? Are they walking very slowly? Like, are they more sneaking, or are they crawling or running or jogging? Walking is very generic. It doesn't really give us a sense of how a person is walking. Which is why you can often recognize weak verbs by adverbs. Because to create that visual, you use adverbs, like walking slowly, or walking stealthily, or walking fast, stuff like that. So if instead you use strong verbs, you get something that's more specific and vivid. They create that clearer image in the reader's mind. So strong verbs, in other words, show more, while weak verbs tell more. So this is really one kind of tool in your toolkit to show instead of tell. So why should you care about it? Like I said, stronger verbs, well, are also stronger words, and they enhance the visual experience. Like I said, walking, very generic, doesn't really give us much to go on. Or, for instance, something like pull, like you can pull something very fast, you can pull something toward you very slowly because you're afraid that it makes a sound. Or if you put something on a desk, like you can slam it on a desk, you can lay it down, smoothing the paper to get out the crinkles, the creases. Like strong verbs create that visual experience. And they also enhance the emotional experience. Because when we feel different emotions, we act differently. So if I'm very sad, like I will walk very differently than when I'm angry, right? If I'm angry, I will stride into the room or stomp into the room even. While if I'm sad, I might just shuffle, just be like, oh, I don't I don't care anymore. So the words you use also give that emotional experience in the reader's mind. So it becomes very clear to them what kind of emotional state the character is in, even without you telling them outright. And when you improve the reader's experience, you're far more likely that they will fall in love with your book. So you definitely should care. So that's all good and well. But how do you actually find weak verbs? In general, you can find them by looking at a construction of to be plus verb. For example, I was thinking, she is guarding. Note that sometimes this construction is accurate because just of tense. Sometimes someone was doing something if it's ongoing, right? But other times you can also replace it. For instance, I reflected, Well, reflected also might not be the best word, but or she guards instead of she is guarding. Um, you can search also for stated emotions because, like we said before, if you use the right verbs, you can show the emotional state so that you don't have to have it written out. For instance, I felt angry versus I hate you, I slammed the door in his face. Both the dialogue, I hate you, and the slamming of the door in his face. Note that I'm angry. If I would just close the door, I close the door. That doesn't really have that same feeling, right? Another way to find weak verbs is checking your adverbs. Sometimes adverbs work, so I'm really not opposed to using the adverbs at all. I don't think you should cut all of them out or need to cut all of them out, but you have to take it in a case by case basis. Like, is there a way you could say it better, or is the adverb like doing their job? For instance, she smiled sadly. There's no verb that conveys that kind of smile that I know of. But if you have, for instance, she walked quietly, you could also have she padded or she slid or whatever. Or she snuck, whatever. If you try to visualize the verb, that's also a way to kind of get a sense of whether it's a weak verb. So does the verb make clear how the character is doing a thing? Like I said before, for instance, if he's putting something on the table, how is he putting it on the table? Does he lay the sheet on the table, striking out folds? Does he plop it there and then strides to the kitchen and grabs snacks? That's kind of like absent-mindedly plopping something on the table. Or does he slam it? All of those things show how he's doing the action, while just putting it on the table doesn't really give us much to go on. So, how do you edit weak verbs so that you can have stronger prose? First, you check the verb and you determine whether it's weak with the previous checks that we just discussed. Then you determine whether you should replace it or if it's okay to leave the verb as it is. And then, depending on the needs, you can either just switch out the verb for a stronger one, or you might need to rewrite the sentence with stronger verbs to clarify intent and emotional state. And sometimes you could also consider adding some figurative language to get the point across, because sometimes you can't really find the right verb to show what you mean. And then figurative language can really help to give a clear visual about how someone is acting. So let's just see it in action with an example. Okay, so let's have a look at some example text. This is some sections of a previous draft of one of my manuscripts. So let's have a look. We're going to purely look at the verbs here. So there probably are other issues to solve as well, but here we just want to really hone in on the verbs. So let's get started. Nikki, what are you doing? Dialogue, but then my mother hovered over me. So here we have hovered, which I think is fine. It speaks to the senses, or speaks to the senses. It gives a clear visual, right? She's hovering over. So I think that works. But then we have Alex had dropped me off, which also fine. Like, it's a common phrasing, and it's just because we want to quickly establish that this is what he did. So it is a bit of telling rather than showing, but for the purpose of the scene, it's fine because we don't want to show Alex dropping me off. And I'd spent the rest of the afternoon lying on the couch, staring at the ceiling, with jingles happily curled up on my chest. So despite the fact that it is also a very long sentence, so you might want to cut that up. You can see it's also not the most interesting. I'd spent, which I suppose this could be okay. Like, it doesn't really create like a clear visual or anything, but it's more here to say that this is what she'd been doing for the rest of the afternoon, so it grammatically makes sense. But then we have, I think the most issue I have is with lying on the couch staring at the ceiling, because yes, you can lie on the couch, but it doesn't really give us a very strong visual, and it doesn't really give us any kind of emotional valence. So let's try something else. And I'd spent the rest of the afternoon. Let's say she's sprawled on the couch, staring at the ceiling. Like, staring is fine because we can see her staring, but we might want to give a bit more of a hint of her emotional state attached to that staring. So I'm definitely going to cut off the sentence anyway, so that this becomes something separate. Staring at the ceiling, maybe something like watching her life and all the filled moments or something like that. Showcasing movie of my failures on a loop. So this gives us a much clearer image of also her state of mind. So she's not just lying and staring up at the ceiling, which could also mean she's just tired or bored, which is also something you do then. But this is really connotates more of a depressed kind of state where she's just sprawled on the couch and looking at all her failures, like she's contemplating this, and it gives us a more clearer image. Then with Jingles happily curled up on my chest, which is also a bit at odds with her being in a very depressed state. So I think it would be good to kind of get these two ideas separately. So maybe we can have something like, contrary to my mood, Jingles had curled up on my chest, purring. Purring contently. Well, if he's purring, he's content. Like, that's a cat thing. Contrary to my moods, Jingles has curled up on my chest, purring. I'm not overly happy with it yet, but it will do for now. Nothing, why? What's the point of doing anything? Mindlessly, I scratched Jingles behind his ear. So scratched here is fine, but perhaps we can do something else to indicate the mindlessly. But again, that's a different issue, so we're not going to go too deeply into that. Eliciting a vibrating purr from him. I mean, technically that's correct. eliciting. Can you see eliciting? Not really, right? I scratch jingles behind this here. And burr vibrated firm. Not the best, considering we already have him purring here. So maybe we can just remove that there, and then then we can also just remove this, so we don't really have a emotional state of the cat. Jingles. That curled up on my chest. And it's purr vibrated through me. Could be better, but let's leave it for now. Mom frowned and pursed her lips. So this is always something, I mean, frowning, you can see. Pursing her lips, you can also see. So it's kind of like a worried expression. I do know, so this is technically fine. It's showing rather than telling, but it is often a bit overused. I know I overuse it. So this might be something to mark anyway, to perhaps change for something else. Especially if you know that you kind of overuse this kind of thing as well, or if you overuse something else in terms of dialogue, action, tag kind of thing. Like often it's also chuckling, like he chuckled or he smiled or shrugged. You know, if you know from yourself that you overuse those types of things, even if it is a strong verb and it shows, just keep it in mind and you may want to change it anyway. So I thought I had no more tears left. So I thought I had no more tears left. So thought here is the verb and also a filter word, but it's correct here because if you leave it out, because she did think she had no more tears left. It is the action of thinking we're kind of going for here. So that would be okay. But they still sprung to my eyes. Traitorous and unbidden. So we have sprung here, which, yeah, that shows. Tears springing to your eyes, so that is also fine. Mom lifted me. If you lift someone, I'm not sure about that one. I feel lifting is kind of similar to things like pulling and putting. Like it shows us the action, but it doesn't really show us like how much effort it costs her. So let's say that it costs her a lot of effort. We would say hoisted me up on my shoulders, causing Jingles to growl in annoyance. So I think the in annoyance is a bit redundant there. Mom sat down. So sitting down is kind of similar, like it serves purpose, and you definitely don't need to change this all the time, in my opinion. But for the sake of the exercise, we can have her. So let's go with blunt. Plunked on the couch. Yeah. Plunked on the couch. Mom hoisted me up by my shoulders. Plunked on the couch. And then laid my head on her lap as if I was still 10 years old. So even though laid is kind of doesn't tell us much, like lying earlier, because we have the as if I was still 10 years old, it does give us a visual, right? It gives us the visual of a mother who wants to comfort her child. I didn't care. It was nice. It's fine. She ran a hand through my hair. Don't really like that one. Because running a hand through your hair is kind of like. So let's instead. It's kind of like a speedy gesture. When instead we want to go for a kind of loving and comfortable movement. So we can say caressed instead. Okay, so here we have a different section. I closed my eyes. So closed here I think is fine. You could go for something more showy. But if someone can just close their eyes, but they can also scrunch them shut, for instance, or have them kind of half open or only lightly open or whatever. So you could come up with a different way of saying that. But for this purpose, I think it's fine. Then I open my eyes again. I opened my eyes. Not again. Well, again, in a sense. Opened is fine. Joanna was leaning forward, an intrigued expression on her face. So here we have the to be variant because she was leaning forward. That's because Joanna started leaning forward or leaned forward when she had her eyes closed. But instead of doing it this way, we could say it a bit differently. Joanna. So, okay, let's have her move forward instead when she wakes up, opens her eyes. I like the verb angled. Toward me. So now it's no longer something passive she's doing, like she was leaning forward. Now she's leaning or angling toward the character. Which, I mean, it means the same, but it does give a bit of a different image. If you do want to have her have been leaning forward while her eyes were closed, we could also have something more of an observation, like maybe Joanna's face was closer to me now, something like that. So it's more centered on Nikki's perception. An intrigued expression on her face. So yeah, I mean, not the best thing, but not verb thingies. Something felt off. I think that's fine here. It was as if all the heaviness I'd felt over the last months was resurfacing and then trickled away. So let's have a look. It was as if. That is fine. I felt we can go remove that. It was with all the heaviness from the last months. Was resurfacing. Like I like resurfacing. Oh. But then we can do instead resurfaced. Because of all the heaviness from the last months resurfaced and then trickled away. So trickling is also a decent verb. And I like how it sounds with resurfaced as well, because both kind of make me think of water. So maybe, I mean, this is about verbs, so we're not going to have a look at that, but maybe I could find a way to have heaviness described more as something that also resembles water to kind of keep with that imagery. Then a final example thingy. That snorted, again, it's fine. But if you know from experience you overuse this, then it might be good to change it out anyway. So here I have a couple that are often overused. So is snorted, I stiffened. I think I stiffened is fine. He grimaced, also something that's often overused. Then for a moment everyone was silent. So was silent. It was silent. So it's not the best because it doesn't really give much imagery, right? So depending on your goal here, like it's okay to leave it, but you could also choose to create some kind of imagery here to really hone in on the silence. So it really depends on what you find important here in this moment of the scene. If you really want to hone in on the silence or just leave it as it is. Carter looked at my dad with an admonishing glance, not dissimilar from a teacher berating a student. So while looked doesn't really give us much, we do have some information to go on here. We have admonishing glance and not dissimilar from a teacher berating a student, so we do have clear imagery, but looked isn't really giving us anything. So we might want to change this up a little to get the same information across with a better word. So let's here say watched. Because watching someone here has a more of a meaning that he's doing it very obviously, right? You could also go with stared. That would might be better. Stared at my dad. So with an admonishing glance, we don't really need that description because we have the not dissimilar from a teacher berating a student here. So we already have some imagery here to really help us understand how he's staring at my dad, right? So that's kind of how you can, when you don't really know how to find the perfect verb to get your emotion or visual across, you can use figurative language or a comparison to help the reader understand what's going on. And then that cleared his throat. So again, cleared his throat, fine, it's a clear action. But like snorted and grimaced, it's often overused. So while for the sake of strong verbs, you don't really need to change them, you still might want to do so to make sure it's not overused in your story and that it actually adds something to the emotional valence of the scene. And then finally, he put a comforting hand on my shoulder. So we've already discussed put is not very visual. So here we also have a weak verb. We do have a little bit of visual, as in we have comforting hand. So we do get a sense of how he's putting it on his shoulder, because when you put a comforting hand on someone's shoulder, it's very different than when you kind of clap them on the back or something. But we might want to exchange the put for something a bit nicer. For instance, let's go with placed. This placing is a bit more gently. Comforting hands. Yeah, that's fine. All right. So there you have it. Some changes to all the verbs, so it gets to be a little bit stronger emotionally. So I hope that showed you how even some small changes can make the difference. So hopefully that gave you a good idea for how to find weaker verbs in your manuscript and kind of find stronger substitutes to create a more vivid and emotional story for your readers. The example turned out a bit longer than I'd anticipated. Sorry about that. I've been doing the edits, like recording them as I went and kind of thought about them. And because it's on video, I thought about them thrice as hard, if not more. So, yeah. Anyway, I hope it at least helps. Okay, so if you like some more tips on editing, please do sign up for my free self-editing course, where you'll learn more about each stage of editing. For instance, also line editing, which exchanging verb choice is part of, and how you can do it yourself. And you can find the link in the description. And for some more writing and self-editing tips, have a look at my other videos. And if you enjoyed this one, please hit the like button and subscribe to stay updated for more content. Thank you for watching.